after the hour. Turning the corner into our first off the beaten path, below the digital fold segment. We call it Headlines, and we just take you where we think you need to go. During it, it's brought to you by Swain Pools and Spas. Go by and see them here in the capital city on West Tharp Street. Not the cheapest, the least expensive. Go by and see them in person or visit them online at swainpools.com. Swainpools.com. All right, very excited. Now joining us by phone, our good friend Dan Wos. Good morning, sir.
What's going on, you guys?
Well,
I love it here in Florida, even if I'm over the telephone.
Oh, well, see, I was going to ask. I was like, wow, are you here in the Gunshine State?
No, if I was there, you'd know it. I'd be knocking on the door.
Hey, roger that. Listen, first of all, let's get this out of the way. I understand that some celebratory kinds of communications are in order. Happy birthday, my man.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm getting younger every year.
Yeah, me too. Not at all. But that's okay. I know a lot of people my age that are really doing it right. So, but happy birthday. Not getting older, just getting better. We are joined in studio this morning, how appropriate, by our good friend Shayna Lopez-Rivas. She, like yourself, very pro-gun activist, advocate. And we were talking with her before we came on this morning about your background, coming full circle, or not 180 degrees. You started life being in a gun-friendly family and became an anti-gunner, and now you are giving us all a real insight into the minds of the anti-gun activism groups here in the country.
Well, yeah, pretty close. Hi, Shayna. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. So let me just I'll give you guys a little brief on me. I was, I shot guns with my dad when I was a kid. We went hunting and target shooting. And but what happened was I went on to tour in rock bands. I played in bands through my 20s and even in my 30s. And I got kind of caught up in all the propaganda. All the anti-gun propaganda. And my dad wasn't around, so he died when I was about 24. And what happened was I realized just how powerful that propaganda is. I mean, it really gets in your head. And it wasn't until I had a situation in my life where I may have, luckily I didn't need to, but it was a situation where I possibly have needed to protect myself and my wife. And I was unable. Luckily, we got out of the situation unharmed and everything was fine. But in that moment, I realized just how important it is to be able to protect yourself and your family. And in that moment, I realized, because I didn't know how, I didn't have any real value at the time when I was a kid for the Second Amendment, and I didn't really, put any value on our freedoms. I didn't understand any of that stuff until I grew up, learned responsibility in life, and had a situation where, I almost may possibly have needed to protect myself. So anyway, it clicked.
That kind of flipped a switch for you, and it's funny. That's a very common theme I find, even between just the two of you and Shayna. She had a situation in her life where the need to protect herself wasn't available. And now she is very committed. Yeah,
actually, it's a very similar story. I fell for the propaganda as well, and I thought that I would never need a gun, and who needs guns for protecting themselves? And some bad things happened, and suddenly, hey, a gun becomes a legitimate form of self-defense, and that propaganda starts to look more like propaganda instead of this reality that you're kind of stuck in.
Yeah, exactly. And once I realized that, everything opened up. So I wrote an article. I had an article called "Fear of Guns" that got made on a lot of different websites and stuff. But that article was the starting point of the book "Good Gun, Bad Guy," because I started to get a real understanding of what I had been convinced of over those years, all the anti-gun propaganda and rhetoric, and it started to make total sense and become perfectly clear to me. So the book is really about my awareness and my understanding of what the propaganda is all about and how they do it and how it makes people think and how they manipulate people to believe that guns are dangerous and gun owners are reckless. It's all a bunch of lies and a bunch of fake narrative, but it's there and it's very powerful and it influences people.
You know, one of the things that I wanted to bring up while we're together this morning, Dan, is this Women's March that we've been talking about on the show and that has been in the news. Kind of all got kicked off a couple of weeks ago now with the Dana Lash NRA commercial, very pro-gun, and then there was a lot of pushback. Black Lives Matter responded with a commercial of their own that I have said, in my opinion, was inciting violence. And then you have this Women's March, which it's very interesting. You know, you talk about the narrative, you talk about how the message and how pervasive it is and effective it is. But when you start to peel away some of this stuff, this Women's March that went on over the weekend, they were protected by armed security.
And isn't that ironic? It's either ironic or hypocritical.
And then contrast that with the idea that you have this police shooting in Minneapolis, and now, because it doesn't fit any of the left's narratives, any of the anti-gunners narratives, the one they grab up and run with is they want to spin it and talk about gun culture and gun control.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I just did an interview with Grant Stinchfield from NRA TV, and we talked about this. Now, that whole backlash was because of a woman named Tamika Mallory. She wrote a letter to the NRA condemning them for that video that Dana Lash did, which the video with Dana Lash did, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And then Grant Stinchfield did another one. Yeah, but these guys they were great. But the hypocrisy was crazy, because what they're doing. Here's the thing: they can burn down buildings. They can spit in cops' faces. They can, make assassination attempts on Republican congressmen, and then they can turn around and they can blame, NRA members for inciting violence, which is ridiculous. So the hypocrisy over there is outrageous on the left. And what I always say is, okay, you want to do something about the problem, go into the inner cities. Take your little picket signs and your little protest signs, go into the south side of Chicago and demand that the gang members turn over their illegal guns. Because if people like Tamika Mallory and if people wanted to really solve the problem of human violence, they do something about gang violence. But they don't, because it's either unsafe or, it's either... What they rather do is they take cheap pot shots at the NRA, at gun owners, because it's safe. They don't get in trouble that way. But the hypocrisy is outrageous.
Now, Dan, I believe the last time that we had you on the show was either end of April, beginning of May. So, there's obviously been a lot on your plate since that period of time. I want to talk a little bit about what you've been doing with your book and some of the appearances that you've been making, as well as, some of the events that you've been showing up to, and just how your message and how your vision has been progressing throughout the country and especially, in the hearts and minds of gun owners across the United States.
Well, thanks, Rob. I've been doing a ton of radio and getting my message out as much as I can. Like I said, NRA TV. I've been with them for now on a few shows, and the message, most often I'm speaking to the choir, but there are people who are anti-gun who are listening to shows like this because they're looking for information to further their agenda. So to those people, I always try to get the message out. If you're listening out there and you're an anti-gunner, please stop letting the anti-gun fake media left stop manipulating you in the way you're thinking about guns, because it's all wrong what they're trying to get you to believe. So my message out there is open your eyes, anti-gunners, and look at the reality. We're here talking about guns. We're talking about self-defense. We're talking about freedom. And once you understand the importance of those things in this society, you'll turn around. You'll have an understanding and awareness. So I go out and I try to get this message out, and I try to also help gun owners understand how they think over there on the left and how manipulated they are in their thought process. Because if we can understand them, we can either help them or defeat them. We're going to do one or the other.
And that is a very interesting point that you just brought up. And it's really, I think, the best thing that Good Gun, Bad Guy has done for anybody across, reading it or whatnot, is just giving the people on the right, the pro-gunners, the ability to contradict and to push back against the lies of the left and the anti-gun movement. I think that the biggest problem that I run into in my personal life, or in a lot of people that I've talked to's personal life, is that sometimes we just don't have all of the information to push back against the lies. And I think that the more information that's readily available and ready for us to push back, the better.
Yeah, and I agree. And here's the thing. My pro-gun friends, gun owners, a lot of people tell me, well, we have the Constitution, we have the Bill of Rights, we have the Second Amendment on our side. Who cares what those radical anti-gunners think? Well, here's why we need to care. Because those radical anti-gunners are regular people, converted. They've been manipulated by this propaganda, and a lot of people who don't own guns, don't understand guns, don't necessarily critically think this stuff through. So they're ready for all the indoctrination and the propaganda. And the anti-gun radicals and the groups, and they're ready to spoon feed them. And this is what we get in the media. So to the pro-gunners, it is important. It is important that we get a true, honest gun narrative out there to people, so they understand.
Well, and thanks for everything you do. The title of the book, Good Gun, Bad Guy, just that says a tremendous amount about the truth of this fight for our rights. And you mentioned the folks who say, well, what do we have to fear? We have the Constitution. We have the Second Amendment. Have you seen in the last week some of the stuff that's been coming out? They say any amendment can be changed and the document can be they are talking specifically about attacking the Second Amendment, that is that the thing that most of the pro-gunners or the gun owners that are not necessarily out pro-gun activists or advocates, but just living their life that way and feel so safe and secure because they understand we do have the Constitution and the Second Amendment. Let there be no misunderstanding. That is the target now.
Yeah, and the first part, and I always say the first part, is to change the mood of society. And that's what they're trying to do. So when they say stuff like that, just like when they talk about impeaching Donald Trump, which is ridiculous, the first thing is they if they talk about it enough, they'll start to gain acceptance on the concept, just the idea, just the concept. That's the first step. So that's what they try to do. It's all in the narrative, helping people feel comfortable with the idea of destroying our Second Amendment. That's the first step, is helping people feel comfortable, easing them into the concept and the idea.
Yeah. Well, listen, Dan, thanks again for joining us, taking time out of your day to be with us. I know it's a pleasure for Shana to meet you. And
Shana, nice to meet you. And let's connect on Facebook. Let's talk a little bit. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to listen to the show.
No problem. And I already added you on Facebook.
She's a multitasker. These I can't call them millennials because I get pushback. I think
she's a millennial.
One millennial and one
I'm Gen
Z over
yes.
here. So it's very confusing.
You can't see me rolling my eyes right now, but I want you all to know that I am rolling my eyes now.
It's about how you feel. It's 2017. It's about how you feel and how you identify. So for the record, I self-identify as a gun-free black lesbian. And that's because I feel pretty, and I feel good about that. So there's nothing wrong with it because it's 2017. But thanks, man, for joining us. Have a great, productive day, and we really appreciate your time.
Oh, anytime. You guys have a good one. Thank you.
Yes, Thanks,
sir.
Dan.